miserable. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Miserable Podcast.
Episode 42.
Nobody knows what episode this is. Put it in post. So
That face you made. I enjoyed it.
So I was hoping to record a bunch of podcasts tonight. We did pretty good. This is number 3 for tonight. The reason we're recording in batches, don't say 4. The Casual Friday one wasn't like, I'm not counting that.
Yeah, Paulie.
Yeah, Paulie. Shut up, Paulie.
It's a podcast.
So 3, and the reason we're like trying to get these batch recordings in is because there's travels and things happening. People won't be around, so we have to get these in while we can.
It's all information that people care about.
Yep, everybody cares about everything that we say on this podcast that we have found. Once again, we're in this new office studio spot, making coffees nonstop, drinking LaCroix, and we're having a good time. Paulie, how you feeling?
Tired and I have a headache. But I'm happy.
Drink more water, bro.
Such a downer.
Drink more water, bro.
I am, bro.
How about you, Phil? How you
I am
feeling?
dehydrated right now.
Not too bad. I just had a triple shot espresso.
Espresso.
I'm good. What exactly is an espresso?
Listen. Here you go, Phil.
There you go.
So,
My mind.
I'll
Paulie.
narrate. Paulie is drinking water to appease Phil
Okay.
and Phil's diagnosis, and he's chugging it, and
All right.
it's gone.
Good job.
All right.
All right.
So here we are. We are going to go ahead and jump right into this. So there is this idea that is floated around sometimes that if you really want to be successful and you really want to be effective, that you have to like zone in and dedicate yourself to one thing and like laser focus. And people always say, if you take a light and you focus it down to an intense point, then it can like cut and do things.
Science.
So like there's this kind of school of thinking that you hear sometimes of people that are like, you have to be intensely focused in order to be successful or effective. I've heard that my whole life, and I have just decided I don't care about that because I enjoy a lot of different things. So I've kind of like dedicated myself to the thought that that's what everybody says. I'm going to do it different. The reason this is a podcast topic is because I was perusing Instagram a couple weeks ago, and somebody asked Gary V, like about this. Like, I have to be focused, right? I have to do this. And he made a comment that I really loved because I felt like I could relate. And he said, I am the most unfocused, focused person you'll ever meet. Except he did
the PG version.
Yeah, he didn't say person. If you're familiar with Gary V, just be careful if you're sensitive to language. Or find the curse-free Gary Free. Gary Free. Lord, it's almost midnight. But anyways, I loved that because he's like, I do this, I do that, I do this. He's like, he's got 100 different things going on. And he was just basically trying to tell the person that asked him, is like, don't confine yourself. Don't put yourself in a box. Don't limit your own possibilities, but branch out. And when I heard that, I was like, yes. And I think I actually sent it to a couple of you because I was just like, this is why I'm always so sporadic, because I get passionate, I get off on these trails and I want to do different things. I want to experiment, you know. So I would like to hear, have you heard people say that before? Have people said that to you before, Paulie, like you have to focus on something and go with that thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of photography or...
Yeah.
And what would that look like for a photographer? Because I'm trying to think, like, I guess like a niche, like weddings or this or portrait photographer.
But I mean, what a lot of people say that have that that technique or that approach or that saying to their business, they usually go even further than that. They're like, if you're going to be a photographer, or if you're going to be a wedding photographer as your like primary niche, dive deeper and find like a niche within a niche for that, or niche, depending on how people say it. So wedding photography is very broad, right? But something more specific could be like travel and destination weddings, or like some like ethnic weddings. Like I know a lot of people who really enjoy shooting like Indian weddings. So finding a category within a category, sometimes even a category and a category and a category, and then just killing in that. And I sometimes think that saying like find your niche and like focus on that is one of those statements that people make as a blanket to help people find the first layer of success.
Right, but let's clarify something. I don't want to. I look at finding your niche and
It's a different
focus
avenue.
is almost too like I don't. Those can be
Right.
the same thing, but I don't want to get confused because I think niches are very advantageous.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of value in finding a niche, and like just basic business specialization basically decreases competition. So the more you specialize in something, the less people that are competing with you. So I don't want to necessarily talk about like specialization and mainly finding like a niche as much as putting yourself into a box, as in you have to do. So let's talk about categories. Okay. So like I produce music, but I also like writing. So I've written a couple books that no one's read. But I also like podcasting, and I also like branding, right?
And you also like fishing.
Right. But like, but somebody, I think it with the opinion that we're talking about would look at that and say, you have to
Focus
pick
on
one of
one
those
thing.
things. Do you want to be a producer? Do you want to be a writer?
And put all your energy
Right.
in
And
that.
you have to put all your energy in that thing, not necessarily finding a niche within that thing, but like
Maybe
you're
your
gonna have to
question-
you're gonna have to be
Pick one.
Yeah, okay. And this is kind of what it goes back to, is almost like you have to pick an identity.
So
You can't be
just-
a music guy and this guy and this guy and this guy.
You
You have
just
to pick an identity.
generalized it more. You said in photography, so it's kind of a different question then, because
I think he just said photography just to kind of pull your interest.
right. Well, I'm just saying, like, I was thinking just in the industry. So because there's a lot of people that will focus or find a niche but also shoot other things. Like they'll also shoot families, or they'll also do graduation. They'll also do this, that, and the other thing. But now that you're mentioning like other topics of interest outside of a specific industry, that's kind of a different
So
thing.
let me give you no, because I was thinking about it in terms of like that Gary Vee thing. Like he does this kind of business, this kind of business, this kind of. So let me put it to you this way: it's like somebody telling you, and you're like, "What do you do?" And you're like, "Well, I do photography. I also do graphic design." And this and that. And that person looking at you saying, well, if you want to be a successful photographer, which one do you like more? You're like, well, I really enjoy photography. Well, if you want to be a photographer, then you got to focus on that. Forget graphic design. Because I've had people tell me this before, like legit, not about photography and design, but in my context, I've literally had people tell me like, if you want to do that, you're wasting time doing that. You need to put all your focus in one thing. And I've just always been like, nah, I'm not going to do that, which I'm grateful for now. Because Miserable Company was started off of a book that I wrote. And we do a podcast because I also do music. And I've messed with Illustrator because for some reason a few years ago I was designing t-shirts and I learned how to use Illustrator and draw like in this style. And all of those things now have come back into play for this.
Right.
So if I would have been focused, I would have missed out on skills that
you've developed
right.
over time.
So that's more the context than what
Right.
I know I said photography, so I kind of set you up for failure in that sense. But that helped me kind of even define what we were talking about.
Right.
So it's not necessarily just that. It's like somebody telling you, well, if you want to have if you want to do a successful startup with your friends, then you can't be working where you're working, and you can't also be starting a restaurant, and you can't also be doing that. Like, you have to pick one of those things and do it.
Right. For me, first of all, I'm just a rebel. So if you're gonna tell me that this is the way I need to go,
You're not.
automatically I'm gonna go the
Even
other
if
way.
you weren't planning on it, now
Even
you
if I
are.
wasn't planning on it, just because you told me to do that.
Right.
Now
Reverse
this
psychology. We know how to control them now. Reverse
Yep, that's
psychology.
right. In 11th grade, my 11th grade English teacher really got on me a lot. One of my habits is like tapping. And I would be in class tapping all the time, just on the desk, like just tapping away. Her biggest concern with that was that she felt like whenever I was tapping, I wasn't paying attention and I wasn't focused. But it was
The opposite.
the total opposite. Like whenever I'm locked in, I'm tapping. I don't even actually realize that I'm tapping. I'm so locked in to what it is that I'm doing. And like even playing drums, whenever I'm like really thinking about what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I'm playing, it's 9 times out of 10 I'm about to make a mistake somewhere along the line. However, if I'm just like flowing, not even thinking about it, like keeping rhythm and like counting, I still have, a lot of growth that needs to happen there. But it's just not, I just don't think about it. Whenever I find myself like trying to count or like trying to find the one or whatever the case is, it's just like I'm a mess if I'm just like just going with it.
Like, you tell people all the time when you're recording or other things, like, don't think about it.
Just do it.
Feel it.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
it.
like just feel it. So I can definitely relate to someone saying, "Hey, just focus on this." And I found myself in class, like just like holding my hands.
And now you can't even pay attention because all you're thinking about is
I
don't
can't
tap.
pay attention
Don't tap,
at
don't
all
tap.
because I'm like, yo, don't tap, like don't do nothing. And I was even more distracted at the time because it's just second nature to me.
Right. Yeah. She was like basically requesting that you change like how you do things
Right.
to conform to her.
And so at an early age, I just realized that my mind just worked totally different. Even just dealing with customers or just doing different things, I was like always tapping. It was just, that's just me. And I'm a lot more focused when I'm like that. Even like now at work, I have a very active mind. So because of my active mind, I cannot just focus on one thing. Because I'm just like, just even in a conversation, it's just like, yo, why is that right there? Like, why did we put that right there? And we also need to fix that. I saw that like 20 minutes ago, and that needs to be fixed. And I'm just like all over the place. And my guys, they're just like, yo, like slow down.
So you basically just like, do you kind of feel like you're on your own wavelength, like in that and your thought pattern and in your actual attention focus? And if somebody's telling you like, yo, that's too much, you can't do that. And you're just like, you're just going to go and do your own thing. I'm making all the noise this podcast. Like, is that what you're saying? Is that just like, is it almost like you want to prove? Because I'll be honest, that was kind of part of my thing.
Maybe initially, but then I've also discovered that it's a strength that I could definitely balance all of this.
Right.
Like I can definitely, be over here with my family trying to do this. I'm over here trying to do this. I'm doing that. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I'm gonna juggle it all. And I'm gonna be successful at it.
Right. And have you ever met your limit in that and like been like, oh, this or do you think you have like a decent foresight where you can look ahead and think I can handle that? Or
I think it's definitely there's times where I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed. Like there's times where I feel like this might be my breaking point. Like, this is it. But I'm down for the challenge, right? So what I do is I basically say to myself, like, you're gonna let that be the straw that breaks you? Like, are you really gonna let that get you? And I basically just talk myself up. Next day, put a plan in place, yo. Let's bounce back. So you definitely have to know your willpower and your strength. Operate within your strength. Take challenges. So I'll just challenge myself, like, yeah, I could do that. Or I could do better than that. So, nah, not at all.
I think like the best way that I can define it and the way I defined it to myself a while ago was that I'm the same way. If somebody's like, you can't do that like that. So like, for instance, with music stuff, and I'm having a lot of success in my music career that I basically do on the side now. I'm not even like really hustling at it. It just seems like, more things are coming my way. But a lot of people told me, oh, if you want to do that,
You got to record in pro.
well, not
Pro
only that,
Tools.
like, of course, like I use Reason. So like I use Reason exclusively. And that's another one of those things. It's like nobody's using this when I started using it or using it the way that I wanted to. So I just did it and stuck with it. But like, so I'm that kind of person too. And then like, but when I got like serious about music, the one thing that people kept telling me was like, well, if you really want to do music, move to LA, move to Nashville, move to New York, because that's where it is. And just in my head, I was just always like, I don't have to do that. Right?
Right.
Like, and you look at like books like Outliers, and one of the examples in Outliers is talking about how people who weren't doing the normal thing or weren't in the normal place, they were on the outside or in a different setting, different context, and it actually helped them. So one example I believe was Shaun White. How Shaun White is probably the greatest snowboarder. And I don't know much about this. I'm just going off, what I remember. Like, won all these things, accolades for snowboarding, right? And he lived in California, like apparently like kind of on the coast. And everybody's telling me, if you're going to be snowboard, you got to go to Colorado.
Right.
Well,
Only
the
makes
difference
sense.
was because he was in California, he would go to places where he could go up in the mountains and they like made snow, and it would be like 50 degrees, 60 degrees. So he could go out there all the time and he could stay out longer. Whereas these dudes are in Colorado and it's 0 degrees and they go out there for an hour and they have to stop. Meanwhile, he's over there 4 or 5 hours, comfortable.
Killing it.
And it ended up helping him like in the long run. So I always thought too, like, okay, everybody tells me I have to go this route, but maybe if I don't, maybe it'll help me out somehow. I don't know how, but one thing I have noticed is because I'm in DC and not in Nashville, or because I'm in DC and not in New York, that I can work with people in New York. I'm within driving distance, and I can go to Nashville, like I'm within driving distance. So what it's done for me is, as opposed to like being like in New York, that's just where I'm at. I work with New York people. Or being in Nashville or in LA, I'm in DC. So I have options. I can go to New York. I can go to Nashville. I can work in DC like we are right now with some artists, So that I've seen that's even maybe an advantage that I've found. But the way that I defined it to myself a while ago was that, okay, if I laser focus on one thing, just music production and not writing and not illustration and not these other things, if I just laser focus, I'll probably get to a greater place of success faster. If I spread my focus out and do all of these things, I might not. It's not that I won't get to a equal place of success, but it might take me a little longer. Okay? So then I thought, would it be worth it, like delayed gratification almost, if I learned different things and worked on different things and moved at a little slower of a pace? Would it be worth it to get something maybe even greater in the end, even if it was further out in the future? And what I decided 8 years ago was, yeah, I'll do that. Like, sure, I can move to LA right now, right? And like get in the scene, get in the grind, start working, getting in studios. Yeah, I could do that. Or I could stay here and do this, 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 and this. And maybe instead of 2 or 3 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, something great will happen as a result of that, or even greater than what would have happened if I would have fast tracked it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I basically decided, yeah, I'm going to take that route. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do more. And if it takes me a little longer to get there, I'm cool with that. Because the only real advantage that I see to a laser focus, like one category of thing that I'm doing, right? The only like outright real advantage that I see is just maybe efficiency. It's quicker, right? Because can I, like, say what you can learn or do in 3 or 4 years just by dedicating yourself to that? If I spread my focus out to different things, I can still learn that amount, but maybe it takes me 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess then it's just deciding, is it worth it?
Well, I think too, I don't think you necessarily in this decision you've made, I don't think you have to put yourself in the box of like trying to, split your focus 5 ways at one time either. I think it can look like I'm focusing on these things, but for now I'm focusing on improving and getting better at this one, and then I'm moving on to this one, and then I'm moving on to this one, and it's a little bit of almost like a compromise in a way, right? But you're still trying to in a way reach that same end goal that I wanted. I want to have many things that I'm growing in, but I'm still giving more focused attention to these individual things at a time.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder too, just like to be like completely real. Like I wonder how much of what I just said, how much of it was like wanting to do it my own way and believing myself. But I also wonder how much of it was maybe hidden insecurity. Was like, well, I'm gonna learn this too in case I'm actually not good at this.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
I was just thinking about like in the stock market, right?
Diversifying.
Yeah.
Right. So do you really want to put all your eggs in one basket? Do you just want to say, you know what? All the money that I have, I'm going to just put it in Apple. I'm saying it would say a lot. One, you study the market and understand where that particular stock is going to go. And that investment is definitely going to grow. Right? So that goes to speak to your insecurity. If you're not knowledgeable about that particular stock, if you're not knowledgeable about the company and where the company is going and what they have in the threshold, if you're not knowledgeable of that and you're insecure, then you'll probably be like, you know what, I'm gonna just put 25% right here.
Right.
Right. But I do know that Samsung, they're about to drop that new jump.
All I know
That's
is I wish I
about
would
to
have put
blow.
100% in Tesla a couple years ago. You'd be doing good right now.
Right. Yeah, you'd be pretty good. I wish I had bought
Even though it is pretty
a
volatile.
lot more stock in Home Depot when it was selling at like $24 a share versus right now it's like $230. Right? So it's like, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to put and I think honestly it depends on the person and how you essentially want to be. At some point, when someone told you that you needed to streamline your focus,
I got a funny story.
you want to streamline your focus, it's like saying, nah, I don't want to be that straight up and down person. I rather.
I think some people probably are just more fulfilled from rounding themselves out in a way. You know, some people probably work better for who it works better for who they are to focus on one thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like an energy or a comprehension or anything negative. But some people probably get some sort of reward personally from just doing one thing at the maximum.
Well, I mean,
level.
and that's fine. I think, in the context of the conversation is the assumption that that's what you have to do to be successful.
Yeah, I think anything that anybody says you have to do.
Yeah, pretty much. Shut up.
Yeah.
So check this out. I was in LA 2 years ago, and there's a producer for Kendrick Lamar. Was friends with the guy that I was with. Started talking to him. The dude was like, he was a character. I'll say that. Cool dude, And we started talking, and he said, so what do you do? And I was like, well, I mean, so I was gonna, it's not just a simple, I can say I produce. But
He's about to lay the cards
I
down.
like writing. So I'm getting ready to say, I'm like, I write, but I also, and literally right there, he goes, no. Come on, man, what do you do? I was what I'm trying to say. I was like, I was about to tell you. And he's like, nah, one thing, bro. You get one thing. This is like exact conversation. And I was like, I produce. He was like, there you go. And I was like,
And
meanwhile, I can't say too much, but this dude was known as two things. If I said like what the two things were, somebody could Google right now and know who it was, so I'm not even gonna go there. But like, so what he voiced then, because he was kind of messing with me, you know what I'm saying? Like the dude's won Grammys, like all that stuff, So he was like, nah, he was like, I'm just messing with you. He was still kind of like, he was still kind of serious. He was feeling himself, but he was just like, I'm tired of running into these guys, man. They try to act like they do everything, man. Like nobody does everything. You got to pick your thing. And I'm like, okay. So like, I'm trying to meet him halfway. Like I understand, because what Bammers do, trying to sound good. They're like, you know what I'm saying? I play the bass, but I play the keys too. But I'm saying I produce and I write, and I mix. I just master my boy's album. And it's like, so you do nothing, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it was like kind of that general idea. And I remember thinking like in that moment, I was like kind of insecure, like, oh snap. Like maybe I'm like not good enough at anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I gotta have my thing. I gotta do this. But it's like, wait a second. You step back and you're like, hold on. You can be a producer and a musician and a writer. They're all over the place. Now, there's some people that are just writers and that's what they're known for. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Never had anybody ask me to mix their album. If you ask me like, are you a mixing engineer? Absolutely not. Just had somebody call me, pay me good amount of money to do what? Mix an album.
And they're crazy.
So, yeah, sorry. No, I'm just kidding. But like, so I mean, what am I supposed to do? And the reason I said, I can mix your album. I said, why are you, like, the question they asked was, who mixes your albums? I'm like, me. And they're like, well, you mix mine. I'm like, whoa, chill. I don't, part of me's like, I don't do that.
Right.
But they asked me to do it. What am I supposed to do? So now what? Am I a mixing engineer? Am I not a mixing engineer? Do I mix? Yeah, I do. Because, it's like all these, when you try to put it in a box, man, it's tough. Like, and I think that people sometimes do that and they try to put you in a box, or they even say that. Like somebody that would come to you and say, man, if you're going to be a photographer, you got to stop messing with this and stop messing with that. If you're going to do this, and it's like, if you really grilled them, they're not living by that.
Right.
It's almost just like that, like cheap, like Instagram business wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Like, focus. You gotta be focused. You gotta dedicate yourself to that one thing and like do it. And it's like people were like, okay, yeah, let's do that. But it's not It's not true. I struggled with this for a long time because I do a lot of things. And I thought, well, because I do a lot of things, I'll never be successful.
I just don't care. I'm just living.
I know you don't care. That's why you're here.
I think you mentioned like that guy was kind of joking around with you. And I kind of mentioned it earlier, like being a blanket statement. I think some people do say that. Some people don't say it for this reason. Probably a lot of people don't say it for this reason. But they say it as that sort of like blanket statement to focus on something. Because there is some truth to it, right? But
like the specialization thing, like we were saying. Yeah.
Right. But it's not, doesn't necessarily have to mean only focus on that. So I think sometimes people say that a little tongue in cheek to just to like as a motivation or a motivator to like identify what you are, like you're talking about, a writer, producer, that kind of thing. Especially for someone starting out, it is good to like try and get better at a specific thing. Because you're, like we've said before, you know, you like in the previous podcast, you start chasing or going after one thing, you discover more along the way. So sometimes one thing opens doors to multiple things. So, yeah.
I think you just definitely just have to understand who you are and how you can operate within at your full potential, right? So if you're the type of person, and I think it's just all personality traits. If you're the type of personality that has to focus in to get somewhere, then cool. However, I'm just not that type of person. And to say that I have to focus here to get, to my destiny, nah, I'm just not going to agree with that.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just some people's strength
Right.
is in the collaboration of their talents.
Right.
And some people's strength is in their ability to focus on a single thing and run with it.
Right. Like there's
because if you run a business, you can't just do one thing.
You can't. You got to wear multiple hats.
Right.
That's just, you just have to wear multiple hats.
You got to do that in life. You got to be a father. You got to be a
And I think
employee,
that's what differentiates.
You got to be a volunteer.
That's what differentiates, leaders versus followers. Like, just to me, there's people that I work with that whenever I give direction, I have to say, okay, I need you to do this. And once you get done with that, then I need you to do this. Once you're done with that, then I need you to do this. And then do that.
Task.
Got it? All right, cool. There's other people, I'm just like, hey, man, here's what I was thinking. And I'll just start walking. Start doing this. Cool. Then there's other people, it's just like, hey, man, I think it's kind of old. We just got to change it up. All right, say no more. I got you. And that's it. So we all operate and move differently. To streamline something and to say, if you want to be successful, pick one option, put all your energy and your focus in that option, and that's the only way that you can become successful.
The difference between those two people you mentioned is some people thrive on structure, others thrive on freedom. Like, here's the playground. Do what you can, whatever comes to mind. Other people's like, here's the instructions, and they excel in that way, getting things done that way, exactly the way they need to be. So,
and I think it's just really for that instructor or that influencer to understand the two worlds. Mm-hmm. Bro, the world is yours. However you navigate there, go get it.
And one is not better than the other. It's just different.
However you get there, bro. go get it. That's it.
It's good. It's true.
You look tired, bro.
I'm a little tired. I'm not gonna lie.
That joint just hit you?
Nah, this joint hit me like 3 hours ago.
That's
Nah,
it,
this
bro.
is good though. Like I'm glad we had this conversation because I know, especially, I think as you get, we're in our early 30s. You start getting to this point where you start having a little more confidence in your own wisdom, in your own experience, and you start to like not take everything to heart as much as maybe a 20, 21, 22-year-old dude that's listening to this right now who's seeking, who cares, and who's
That's true.
seeking wisdom, and he's hearing people saying, you got to focus, and he's like, oh man,
I'm not focused.
like I got to do that. And
Not
I
gonna make it.
think what I would want that person to know is like you said, know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you do have to focus on one thing for now.
Right.
Like, or maybe there's multiple skills that you can pick up that will all be used later on.
Right.
Or maybe, you know what I'm saying? You have to do multiple things to find the one thing you want to do so that you can focus on that later.
That's the big key, yo.
Don't put yourself in a box.
That's what I mean, that's basically what I did. Like I was doing graphic design and things like that before I was a photographer. And I was doing website design before I was a photographer. And when I went to school, I basically on registration day picked my major and stuck with it because I saw the lists of potential classes I could take, and it was educating me in all these various things. And there was a point where I almost stepped away to go to art school and focus on photography and get a fine art degree in photography. But I decided if college is going to lead me to a job in a professional environment somewhere, it's probably going to be greater. The opportunities are probably going to be greater for me if I'm more multifaceted. Even if I'm not great at all of those things or highly trained in all of those things versus me being really trained in one thing. And it's why we can, to a degree, why we can do some of the things that we're doing now. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about the music and how it led you to the recording and how we're doing the podcast. We work together on the branding and we all have feedback on that. The technical knowledge that I have and have grown over the years, even though it wasn't my passion or my main thing, is enabling me to do so many other things. So.
Yeah, I think that you can diversify yourself a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah.
Because especially as you move physically to maybe a new location, there may be an opening or an opportunity that's there that you otherwise wouldn't be prepared for unless you were just doing something on the side wherever you were before. I mean, it's like there's so much opportunity out there in so many different areas. And and this is probably the last point that I could make on this topic is that there are things, talking about finding a niche or subcategories, a niche, however you say
Tomatoes.
it, is that you may find that what you're focusing on may have very complementary skills around it that are worth exploring because it could make what you're working on even better. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, that's focus. It's almost branching outside or to a complementary field even, or a complementary whatever, just so that you can come back to that thing and it makes you that much better at what you're doing. Like, for instance, it's helpful for a cameraman to know what the editing process is like, right? So there's certain things you would do and not do based on what you know the second step of the process is like. For instance, so just like if you learn a little bit of mastering, you know that when you mix, you should leave headroom for the next phase. Right. So it's like, well, don't study mastering. I'll just focus on mixing. well, then you're going to run into issues in the future because you're going to send mixes and the guy's going to be like, hey, man, I can't do anything. I can't even EQ without putting a maximizer on this thing. Like, come on, man, you got to back it off. So there are complementary skills to whatever it is that you're doing that you may have to step outside of your thing to experience that will make you better at that thing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Y'all good?
Yeah, good.
All right, man. Thanks for listening. Miserable Podcast. Everybody out there, we love you.
Flo is throwing up the deuce.
Bye-bye.
We got to clean up a little bit.
Miserable.